Hey, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about the safety in archery. There's a few safety tips you need to know, and by the time we get done with this podcast, you will know the different things you need to know about safety. So let's get started with um, archery. Like all our sports, have rules that need to be followed to keep archers safe and spectators safe in general. You want to observe these rules whether you're competing or just shooting for fun. You never know who's downrange, so you want to check that. So the first thing we want to go, the first safety tip is loading or dry firing. You never want to pull back and release a bowstring without an arrow attached. This could damage your bow or injure the archer. Additionally, a bow could not be loaded with an arrow unless standing, should not be loaded unless standing at the shooting line and the signal starts shooting. Shooting line could be anything. If you're all by yourself, your shooting line could be anywhere where you're standing, but you still need to make sure that you're loading correctly. Shooting line could be if you're hunting, when you climb in your tree stand. You don't want to load an arrow in your bow until you're in your tree stand. It's not safe to climb up and down with it. Same thing with a crossbow. You actually don't want to cock your crossbow until you get into your tree stand. Things could happen. You could catch something sharp on it and cut the string, and it's full draw, and it's going to fire. And we'll go over what happens when that happens here in a little bit. Now, one other thing you might want to consider too is like if you're stalking with a bow, being a longbow, compound, or recurve, you can put an arrow in your bow attached to the string. Just don't drop back to actually get to where your target animal is at, or whatever the target is going to be. And then at that point, you would draw. You always want to make sure, same thing with a crossbow, you're carrying a crossbow. You could be walking through and that grass, because you're going to point it down when you're walking. So it's pointing in safe directions because you don't want to have anything in front of you that can actually go off. It could actually catch the broadhead and pull it slightly out, or pull it completely out so you don't have an arrow. So you always want to inspect your bow, whether it be a traditional type or compound or crossbow. Make sure if you are walking around with it, that it is fully seated before you shoot. Talking about it in the next section here, we're going to be talking about inspection. What you need to inspect on your arrows and your bows and everything. So to start with arrows, you need to inspect those before each shot to make sure they're not damaged. If you have an arrow shaft that is damaged, it could cause arrow to snap or injure, an archer. A cracked arrow could also go off course and hit something you don't intend. You could be spectators or anything. The bottom line is damaged arrows are unpredictable and not safe to shoot. Then you want to look at your nock. That's what's going to hold your arrow onto your string. And if those are broke or cracked, unpredictable results can happen. It could go off the different direction. You could have it actually break when you shoot because it's already cracked or missing, and which could cause a dry fire. And dry fires generally will cause your bow to have major problems and need to be fixed, anywhere from coming completely apart to just making a stomach turning sound. So you want to always make sure your nocks are in good shape as well. And then you want to also inspect your bow to make sure that there's no defects in the bow, checking your limbs for cracks, before each shooting session. That'd be a good idea, so that if you have a crack, you don't want to be shooting. The other time you want to check it too is if you hear a sound that is different from normal. When you normally shoot, you're going to have a sound that you're going to be used to. What happens if something changes, where something sounded like it's a little different, then you want to inspect your bow because there's maybe something going on. The other thing you want to check on your bow is your string. Your string on your bows need to be waxed regularly, whether it's traditional or compound recurve or crossbow. That string needs to be waxed. That keeps it from wearing out. How long does the string last? Well, that depends on how much it's waxed and how much you shoot. When I had my store, I seen a guy wear a string out in just a matter of about 6 months because he never waxed it. So take a look at your string. If it's supposed to be a black string, it should always be black. If you see any gray spots forming on it or it turns white, it might need to get replaced, or you need to find out what's hitting your string. If you see any strands that are hanging down, that's a sign of your string breaking. Or if all of a sudden you see a strand that is loose, that means it broke somewhere. And all those cases, you need to replace the string, because if it breaks, it could break at any time, whether you shoot or when you're, you know, just sitting around. I actually had one bow one time, and I didn't have any signal on it. I was shooting, and all of a sudden I have the bottom half I'm holding in my hand, and the top half come back and hit me in the chest, where the bow riser itself actually broke. Now that was on a real old one, the new extruded aluminum risers. I haven't heard of any of those happen. That was one of the old poured ones. You know, this has been a couple decades ago. So now when you're on the shooting line and you are shooting and you hear a command, cease fire, that is your signal to stop shooting. If you're already at full draw, do not release the arrow. Go ahead and let down, because that means there is some unintended target downrange causing unsafe condition. You could have all of a sudden, you know, for outdoors, you could have an animal walking by, you know, it's not intended, or somebody could be there. Or if you're in an indoor range, there could be something going on downrange that you don't know about. So whoever's in charge of watching that kind of stuff, or anybody shooting, sees an unsafe condition, you know, yell out cease fire, and then everybody should stop shooting. Now, the next part we're going to go is aiming. That's always a good thing, because you want to make sure you hit what you're aiming at. So you always want to aim your arrows or point your arrows at the intended target. You know, arrows can be a dangerous weapon and should never be aimed at anything that you don't intend to shoot. I know there is one case here where I live where there was two bow hunters out. One was hunting, the other one was walking out. And it was, you know, right at the time when it gets hard to see. And the hunter was walking out without a flashlight, which probably didn't need, you could see. The other hunter was still actively hunting, and all of a sudden seen something walking by, didn't verify the target, and actually shot him in the leg. So you have to know what your target is, and make sure, you know, in the low light conditions, it gets real easy to see something that's not really there. I know I've had times when I've been out hunting, and I see what, like, swear is a deer standing there, just standing in the, you know, certain range from my tree stand, and all of a sudden it gets light and it's a tree. So you always need to make sure that low light conditions, what your target's going to look like, and make sure you verify the target and then what's behind it. Then it brings up to retrieving arrows. Once you shot your arrows, you don't want to just run down range and pick them up. Now, if you're by yourself on the range, you're the only one there. But if there's anybody else there, you want to wait until everybody's done shooting, and then one person will, you know, give the command to go ahead and pull your arrows. And then when you're at the target pulling, say there's more than one of you shooting at the same target, which happens sometimes, you only want one person pulling at a time. And then you don't want to be standing behind that person, because when that arrow comes out of the target, it's coming back with a little bit of force. And if you're standing behind it, that knot can actually be impaled into part of your body. It could hit you in the leg, or hit you in the chest, or depending where you're at, it could hit you just about anywhere. And those knocks are, you know, they're fairly sharp when they come flying back at you. So you always want to stand back behind there. And then the safest way to draw them is put one hand on the target around the shaft, and then pull with the other, and put your hand next to the other one, and then pull that way. That's the safest way to do it. Don't just go and grab it and yank it, because they have a tendency to twist arrows and flex them. And then that's the time, after you pull them out and you stick them in your quiver, is the time to do a quick check to make sure that there's nothing wrong with them. That brings us up to your target placement. Target should be set up to ensure that no one can accidentally hit by a stray arrow. All competitors must wait for the command to shoot and retrieve. So you could have a lot of people in the line, you know, if you're at a competition or just to practice shooting, and you don't want to start shooting until whoever the range officer is tells you to go ahead and start shooting. That way he's been able to verify that look how the shooters are back behind the line, everything is safe, and then go ahead and shoot. And then once again, when you're all done shooting, wait for him to tell you that it's time to go retrieve them. That's something you always need to be looking at. Where's your targets, and always look at, what's going to go on. You can have equipment failures too. So, look at what's downrange. I know one time I was shooting in an indoor range and I'm drawing back, and I always point my bow at the target when I'm drawing back. Well, I was about 3/4 way back and the head on the release broke off. And of course it sent the arrow straight up into the ductwork. So if it had been outside, who knows how far it could have went. So you always want to make sure of what's beyond your target. How far could that arrow go if you shot it at an angle, so that you know what's back there and so that you can retrieve them. Doesn't happen too often, but it takes one time to send an arrow to somewhere that you don't want it to go. And that brings us to the next one, is safety equipment. Now, it depends on which type of bow you're using. You might need to use an arm guard to protect your arm from getting hit. If anybody's been hit with an arm with the string, you know how painful that can be. It can swell up and leave black and blue marks, and no fun to do that. So if you have a bow that is doing that to you, you want to wear an arm guard. The other thing that you want to think about too is either a tab or a glove for finger shooters to protect your fingers, or use a release aid of some kind. There's calipers, there's handhelds, there's lots of different release aids that help protect your fingers when you release the string. Now on a compound, if you have the bow set up correctly, it should never hit your arm, but things happen. Recurves and long bows, a lot of times they'll wear an arm guard, because just the way those bows are, sometimes they'll hit your arm depending on the grip that you're using on them. But in summary here, archery is a fun sport. But you don't want to forget that it can also be a dangerous sport, because you are shooting an arrow that can penetrate a lot of things that other things would not. But you want to follow the basic guidelines and be apt to enjoy the sport if you follow the basic rules, because last thing you do is have something that's not fun to do when somebody gets hurt. Just to show the how archery can affect different things. I watched a little video not too long ago in 1961 where they did a documentary on I think it's the 9th or 19th Army Special Unit, basically the Green Berets, where they had recurves that they were shooting with broadheads on it. And they compared that they're shooting to a cardboard box with 2 separating cardboard panels filled with dirt. And they shot it with a 45. It penetrated outside one, did not hit the first separating cardboard. Then they shot it with a M1 carbine, which is your 30 caliber, and it hit the second, it went through the first cardboard, hit the second cardboard. Then they shot it with an M1, which is your 30-06 round. And that penetrated through the outside, the first layer and the second layer, but did not come out the back. And now then they shot it, same thing, with a broadhead from a recurve. And not only did it go through it, but it stuck out about 6 inches past the back of the box. So that shows how much penetration you can get from an arrow with a broadhead on it. So it can be fun, but just to show you what it can do. So stay tuned for next week, and we'll cover some more in here. I think next week we'll cover into the what to do once you get to the range, and what to look for, and how to test out your different bows.